So the 8th of June is a day that many iPhone 17 users will be excited for. But it's also a date that many older iPhone users, like my own self, should be very nervous about. And this is because of, yes, iOS 27 will be coming out in a beta 1 form in June 2026, on the 8th of June 2026. So you can see this is my iPad 9th generation running 26.6 beta 1. I'm obviously on iOS 27, and I'm not sure if I'm even going to install 27 on this iPad. Maybe I will, but if you look at the date and time, you'll probably notice something is new. You cannot set the date past January 1st, 2069, which is a good thing, it's a good thing, you can set the date past 2038 like this, You could put the date past 2038, but what you can't exactly do is it makes it so I can't break iPhones. So like if you're if you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been through all my legacy iPhones. You've been through this version of 26 beta 1, and you've just been through all my crap, and you've just been on my channel for a while. You'll probably know why Apple doesn't let you put the date past January 1st, 2069. But the issue is basically what happens after that. So basically, where I'm trying to go with this is this date here. If I put the day on 2070 or 2072, for example, if I put the date, let's just say I want to set my date to 2080. Obviously, I can't because it bricks iPhones with the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband. It doesn't brick them, but it kind of does worse in a way, like it did in 26.0 betas. Where I'm trying to go with this is if I want to set the 2080, I can't because, for that reason. And this is why we can't put the date past 2069. And it's also a safety measure that you can't do this on the iPad. Like the iPad, it would go to like 1971. I'm not sure why they capped it on this side because the 1970 bug has been actually fixed. Yeah, the 1970 bug was actually fixed. So I'm not sure why they put the cap on this side. But the 2069 side makes sense because it prevents you from setting these dates in here and bricking an iPhone with a Qualcomm Snapdragon chip. What I'm trying to say is, or the Snapdragon baseband, excuse me. If you have a Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband, it has Snapdragon Qualcomm software on the baseband. And that basically what happens is the Qualcomm, I don't know the specifics as well as they do the 2038 bug, but the specifics is that the Qualcomm Snapdragon chip has the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband can't really, the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband basically bricks the device. Basically how it works is I don't know exactly as well as they do Unix time and the 2038 bug, but that has been fixed, as you can see. But to my understanding, the the Qualcomm baseband is like, wait, no, it's not. It's where else the Qualcomm baseband is basically expecting a date that is before 2038. So the Qualcomm Snapdragon basebands are expecting a date that is before 2038. And if you go ahead and put it to like 2077, for example, you put the date there, it doesn't really. Basically, what would happen is be like, that's not right. It's been more than 100 years since January the 1st, 1970. And then it basically was like, that's it, I'm corrupting the date. And then the iOS is like, I don't trust that corrupted value. I'm fixing it. And then the Qualcomm chip is like, wait, no, I'm not. No, you're not fixing it. And then it doesn't boot up past the Apple logo. And if it does continue to boot up with that corrupted date, it basically puts it stuck on the lock screen, and then you can't unlock it, and the phone becomes very laggy and unusable. On Wi-Fi only iPads, you don't really have that. On the iPhone, 11, you don't really have that because it's running an Intel baseband, and it does not have that protocol in it. It doesn't have Qualcomm software and Snapdragon software in it. And then same thing goes with Apple Silicon. You know, the 17E, the 17 Air, and the 16E. Those devices don't really have it. But yeah, if you have an iPhone 15 or older, you need to be careful because well, if you have a Pro Max, a 17 Pro Max, a 16 Pro Max, and any of the 16 models, you have a 15 Pro Max or older, this is where you need to be careful because, and this is because the iPhone 11 might actually not get iOS 27, as per the leaks and rumors saying. So I am taking this to warn you guys, because if Apple chooses to lift this cap and you can go all the way in the future like this, right? If Apple chooses to lift this 2069 cap and you could go all the way in the future like this, then that's obviously bad for any Pro Max iPhone, any, and that's obviously going to be bad for any iPhone other than the current 17 Air and 17E, which has the C1X chip for the baseband, or Wi-Fi only iPads. So any other iPhone that has the Qualcomm chip that has iOS 27, Apple chooses to lift this cap, what can actually happen is you can have the same issue as iOS 26 beta, and we don't want that. So, yeah, we can have the same issue as the iOS 26 baseband. And what I'm trying to go with this is that basically the iPhone 11 might not actually be capped here, right? The iPhone 11 might actually keep the cap because even though it has the Intel chip, which is obviously wrong because it doesn't have Qualcomm Snapdragon software on the baseband, it just uses Intel's baseband. And if Apple drops support for that iPhone 11, then any iPhone except the 17 Air and 17E, do not do this to your device. Do not do this to your device, and the iPhone 11 might actually be dropped. And if it is dropped, there might actually be lasting effects similar to the 1970 bugs. So be very, very, very careful with this if you do choose to install iOS 27 beta, because, and you might be like, okay, the new iPhone's going to come out. It's going to have the C2 chip, and it's going to be great for any iPhone by that point. It's going to be a beta, right? But that's besides the point, because then they're going to have to do this same cap issue on iOS 27. And then basically what they did with 26, they're going to have to do with iOS 27, because they're going to have to do the same thing with iOS 27. As you can see here, we cannot put the date to January 19th, 2070 or later, which is, I think, the point where the baseband starts breaking and messing up and stuff. So if you plan to install iOS 27 on any iPhone besides the 17 Air and 17E, and you want to beta test it, and you do not have an iPad, I'm just warning you right now, a week ahead of time, do not do this to your device. So I repeat, if you have an iPhone 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Pro Max, 17 Pro Max, and you have the Qualcomm baseband, and the iPhone 11 is dropped, support for iOS 27, do not do this to your device if that ends up being the case, because that actually might have some long-lasting effects, just like the old 1970 bug from 10 years ago. It might just hang on that Apple logo, and I'm just warning you. I just want to let you guys know about this, because I actually tried in many different ways warning people on Simple Alpaca's YouTube channel. If you know who he is, he's like, if the iPhone 11 gets iOS 27, or he's like, probably won't because of rumors or something like that. I know he's talking real shit, but what I'm trying to tell you is, if that ends up being the case and you have an iPhone with a Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband, no, this will brick your device, and there's not going to be a whole lot we can do about it. And I just want to warn you guys about this as of June 1st, 2026, so that we won't have to find this out the hard way. And I'm going to show you how an iPhone SE, basically the way it worked on iOS 26, I'm going to show you on some of my other iPhones. I'm not going to reboot them because, and we'll jam the recording, but I'm going to show you that as of right now, my 2020 SE can actually set the date beyond January 1st, 2069. But because the SE 2020 actually had the Intel base, it was kind of weird because the SE is released another year, the same year as the iPhone 12, which actually has the Snapdragon Qualcomm's baseband. It actually does have that baseband in it, but the iPhone SE 2020 released the same year has that baseband. So there was a glitch where I kind of got stuck on the Apple logo. But 26.0.1 actually fixed that bug. And therefore, my SE 2020, ever since 26.0.1, has not been affected by this issue. And I've kept it on 26.0.1 ever since then. And I'm going to show you on an iPhone 11 and my iPhone SE 2022 in product red, which has the same chipset as the iPhone 13. So I'm going to show you my iPhone SE second gen from 2020 and the iPhone SE third gen from 2022, as well as my iPhone 11, just so you see. Now I'm not going to reboot these devices simply because I don't want to cause this issue within iOS 27 myself, even though we are on iOS 26. I'm just going to show you what it would look like and the steps you want to avoid taking. That way, we're all on the same page. So I'm going to cut this recording. I'm going to set my iPad back to the correct date and time, and then I'm going to stop recording, and then we're going to go to my iPhone SE 20. We're going to go to the iPhone 11 first. So, okay, as you can see, we're on my iPhone 11. As you can probably tell, there's the status bar has that cutout, so you can tell that the status bar, has that cutout for the notch. As you probably see on your screens right now, this is my iPhone 11. In case you don't believe me, there's my iPhone 11 on 26.6 beta 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to date and time, and I'm going to show you that's the same thing as on my iPad. You can't put the date beyond 2069, which is a good thing, especially if this device doesn't get iOS 27, because, if you do something like that, 21, whatever, it's going to seriously screw up your device. So this is what it looks like. 3 you can go to 3 p.m., but after that, you can't go beyond January 1st, 2069. And that's basically how it'd be like on my iPhone 11. So if I restart and turn off my device, turn it back on, it won't be an issue with 2069. Now I will show you my 2020 iPhone SE, and then we'll go from there. So give me a sec. Okay, as you can see, we're on my 2020 iPhone SE. If you don't believe me already enough, I'm going to show you 26.0.1 iPhone SE 2020. We're going to go to date and time. This time I can put the date beyond 2069, as you can see. So, as you can see here, I can go ahead and put this date beyond December 31st, 2099. I can do whatever date I want. And yeah, that's what behaved on my iPhone SE 2020. But given this fact that this is 26.0.1, given the fact that this is 26.0.1, given the fact that this is 26.0.1, I can obviously do whatever I want with the date and time set as far into the future as I want, which I obviously do not recommend doing this, but I can set it as far in the future as I want, just like this. I could keep going, but the thing is if I reboot this device does not automatically break itself. It doesn't kernel panic, it doesn't become slow, unusable, it doesn't stuck on the lock screen. It will just behave like an innocent device set to December 31st, 2123, as you can see. And this is because we're on 26.0.1. I will show you the date and time again. You can see 26.0.1. Yeah, and basically this is what it is. You can see 2123. I can set whatever date I want, and of course, I can also put the date all the way back to January 1st, 1970, or in this case, I would be on December 31st, 1969, and given the fact that this is immune to the January 1st, 1970 bug. As you can see, there's really no point in capping it on 2001, as you can see, because if I do this and I reboot my device, it will stick, it won't go to 0. Unix time will not go to 0 no matter how many times I try. I can try setting it to 7 o'clock all day, and it's not going to go to 7 o'clock 0. As you can see, it even had a hard time going to 7:01 right there. And this is because this device is immune to the 1970 bug. So if I reboot the device and turn it back on, this will be okay. And this is how it kind of should behave. This is how Apple probably intends for it to behave on the Qualcomm Snapdragon devices with their baseband on iOS 27. But it might not be able to because, it will not, it will not. If Apple doesn't support the iPhone 11, there won't be an Intel baseband to save it, and then the device will just become bricked as the Apple Silicon C1X baseband that's seen in the 17 Air and 17E. Those will be the only ones that can do this on iOS 27 if the iPhone 11 gets dropped. So I'm warning you about this, and and this is probably how we wanted to behave on iOS 27, but again, given the iPhone 11's age, we probably cannot guarantee that 14, 15, and 16. And this is because of the way Apple encoded the chips. So the Pro Max models like the 17 are Pro Max, the 16 Pro Max, 15 series, 14 series, 13 series, and 12 series. These devices will not be able to handle these dates exclusively on the Qualcomm Snapdragon chip because the Qualcomm Snapdragon basebands do have their own baseband, as you can see. So if I change the date and time to this on those devices, you will most likely see the exact same extreme kernel panic that we've seen on 26.0 beta 1. So I'm warning you about this. Do not make this mistake on iOS 27. Don't make this mistake on iOS 27. It's going to be really bad, and it can really screw up your device. And the reason why Apple doesn't just do this on the what is it being called, the C1X chip, is because it's Apple Silicon, it's newer. Typically, 64-bit devices can handle 32-bit code, but 32-bit devices cannot handle 64-bit code. And this would easily render iPhone 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Pro Max, 17 Pro Max iPhones to this exact same thing that we saw in 26.0.1. If the iPhone 11 gets dropped, you will most likely experience the exact same thing in iOS 27. Again, I've been trying to warn people on Simple Alpaca's channel, which, again, people on Simple Alpaca's channel, have been aware of doing this about 27 devices. If people did this on iOS 27, then, basically what he said was that, what Simple Alpaca said was that, if you change the date to 2027, actually, then contacts and other games will not work properly or something like that. Only this time was 26 beta 1 and potentially was 27 beta 1 with the iPhone 11 being dropped support. On the, the 12 series, 13 series, 14 series, 15 series, 16 Pro Max, 16 and 17 Pro Max models, and the Pro and Pro Max models of the 16 and 17 models. Those devices, that's most iPhones that run, and that's basically most iPhones that can run iOS 27. So if that ends up being the case, you'll most likely experience the exact same thing as what we saw on 26.0 beta 1, and that is why this is going to be a lot more serious than what Simple Alpaca showed with the year 2027, which is why I'm here to warn you guys about this. And 2027 is next year, so 2020, so there might be an issue with contacts if the iPhone 11 gets dropped as well. And I'm not saying it's going to crash, but you might have an issue there as well. And you might also experience the exact same thing, and you'll most likely experience the exact same thing as 26.0.1 if you do choose to set the date to January 19th, year 2070 or later. And this is just what I want to show you guys Right now we're on 2124 AD. So, to prevent this kind of issue from happening to this iPhone SE 2020, because I don't plan to upgrade this to iOS 27 either, or 26.5 or 26.6, because of what countries around the world have been doing, and what the governments into. And this device also not getting iOS 27, I'm also not going to be pushing my date much further into the future than 2069, even though I technically can. I will be stopping on 2069 on all my devices, and I also don't want to have to restore this iPhone to the latest software just because I set that type of day and time. So I'm just here to warn you guys. But before I finish this video, I do want to show you my 3rd gen iPhone SE, how that would look like. So give me a sec. So as you can see, this is my iPhone SE 3rd gen. As you can see here, I'm just going to type this in 3rd gen. I'm just going to name it that. iPhone S. I'm just going to take this out of here. So basically, so this one's on 26.6 beta 1, and if I toggle to offset automatically, this phone has the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband, and so I can also not go past 3 p.m., basically to prevent the exact same thing from happening. And yeah, basically what Simple Alpaca also did warn you about 2027, if contacts, if you set it to I think it was this date here that Simple Alpaca was warning people about. If you have a certain contact created before this date, you might have some type of issue there. It might become glitchy and stuff like that. So that's what Simple Alpaca was warning people about. But if I reboot the device on this date, there won't really be an issue. Because, Simple Alpaca said there was an issue. The bug I'm showcasing... However, the bug I'm showcasing is a lot more serious. As you can see, the bug I am showcasing is a lot more serious, and that's why you can't put the date and time beyond January 1st of 2069. That way you can't go to January 19th, 2070 here. As you can see, you can't even go to the 19th or anything like that. So, and if I go to 2070, I also can't go to 2070 nor 2071. And if I try and scroll... And if I try and scroll all the way to 2123 here, or 2124 is where it would land it at, it just has to be way far in the future, as you can see, right? As you can see, it just has to be way far in the future. It doesn't really matter, it just goes to 2069, so if I go way far in the future, let's say that. Say 2117, you can't go beyond January, 1st, 2069 on the iPhone SE. And remember, the way this works is not the fact that the iPhones are 32-bit processors, because they've been 64-bit since the 5S. The problem here is that Qualcomm Snapdragon firmware expects a date before 2038. And, Qualcomm Snapdragon processor baseband firmwares, those things are expecting a date before 2038. It basically is, I don't know exactly what goes on, but the phone is turning on with the day and time in question. The phone is turning on with the day and time in question, but the phone is turning on with the date and time in question. The phone turns on with that date in question. You set it to 2070. The Qualcomm Snapdragon firmware is like, wait a minute, this is impossible. And then the iOS is probably like, do you feel 2070 is impossible? Okay, let me fix it real quick. And then the baseband is like, no, you're not fixing it, or something like that. And then so from the iPhone's end, it's now 1970, right? From the iPhone's end, it's now 1970, or 1971 or 1972. One of those years. I think it depends on the I think it depends on the RTC stage, if whether or not you'll get 1971, 1970, or 1972. So that's what the iPhone thinks it is. Qualcomm's like, no, you're not fixing it. I'm just going to do this. That's even more impossible. You're not fixing it. And then that's what the Snapdragon chip says, and then boom. The conflict occurs, and then the iPhone may or may not turn on, and then that initiates a kernel panic, because the iPhone just doesn't know what to do. Right? Your iPhone SE 3rd gen, iPhone 13, iPhone 12, 14, 15, 16 Pro, 16 Pro Max, and 17 Pro Max. Anything with the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband doesn't know what to do because of that conflict, and it just lands your iOS in a kernel panic. And if you have the iPhone 11, if the iPhone 11 is supported on iOS 27, it might be just the way it is right now, where you can safely set the date to 2069, no big issues. Or if they but if they go ahead and lift this cap, and drop the iPhone 11, then the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband is flat out not going to know what to do on its own, because the iOS sees a different date, and then it just breaks your device. And that's basically how it goes down. And the ways you could fix it on 26.0 beta 1 back in June of this time last year, what you were able to restore it. You can flash it, or you can retain user's data flash. Those are a few options you had, and those are issues you could have. But on iOS 27, I'm warning you that you might actually not have that option, because on iOS 27, I'm warning you that you might not actually have that option, and you will have to go ahead and bring your iPhone into an Apple store if this does happen. Basically, if you do this with iOS 27, the cap is lifted or whatever, and the iPhone 11 is dropped, it might cause irreversible damage, and then you will have to go ahead and bring your iPhone into an Apple store if you do cause that type of panic on your device. I had that issue on my MacBook, even though I think it was a separate issue. I think I triggered an unsigned value glitch, so it was like 2137, I think, something like that I set up on my MacBook, and I actually had to take it into the Apple store very early this year. But we got it fixed. It didn't even require us to have a refurbished replacement MacBook. The store was luckily able to fix it very quickly. But I'm just warning you right now, you don't want to go through that. On a day like iOS 27. So if you can help it, do not install the beta of iOS 27, at least until the iPhone 18 series comes out. Because until the iPhone 18, 18 Pro, and 18 Pro Max, and 18 Fold series comes out, because those will actually have the C2X modem inside. And so if the iPhone 11 is dropped, do not install the betas at all, because this could cause damage by just changing a simple date setting. And honestly, if I were Apple, I would actually lift the cap on iOS 27.1. That way I would actually know that the C2X chip would be there to save us. Much like I'm thinking 26.0 caused a big issue, but if I were to do this on iOS 13, obviously it would be stuck at 2038. But if I did it on iOS 13, I let the date advance forward on iOS 13, it wouldn't cause the same thing. But if you didn't know, Qualcomm baseband was on the 6S and 6S Plus and original, the 2016 OG SE, from 2016, as well as the 6S, 6S Plus had Qualcomm 4G networks, which weren't as aggressive as Qualcomm 5G, but it could cause problems with like activation and stuff. But Intel baseband, so the CDMA 7, or not the CDMA, the GSM and global versions of the iPhone 7, the GSM global versions of the 8 Plus X and 7 Plus, and the iPhone X, as well as all versions, including all versions of the XR, XS, XS Max, as well as the 11 series. Though this was actually a situation where we were running into the opposite issue. Not that I don't think it was that. It's not that 1970 bricked the device, but because Intel basebands are robust, Qualcomm Snapdragon basebands rely on, Qualcomm Snapdragon basebands rely on their own firmware to do this, and it's this firmware inside the Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband that causes your iPhone to become extremely screwy after a certain point. And again, I don't think it's 2038. I feel like it's 2040. Actually, I actually feel it's 2040-ish. Yeah, it's like 2040-ish when it's like 2040-ish when you start running into Qualcomm Snapdragon related issues. It's like 2040-ish. It's not really 2038. So it's like 2040-ish when those issues begin to arise. So what I'm trying to say is that obviously, you change it to 2069, the cap is lifted, or you change it to 2070, and you're well beyond 2040. And if you do that on the beta 1, the iPhone 11's drop, cap is lifted, and then the C2 modem iPhones are not out, then basically it solely relies on the Snapdragon Qualcomm's firmware that expects that lower date, and then that lower date is not that lower date, and then the iPhone thinks it's fixing it by going into 1970. The Qualcomm Snapdragon baseband firmware is like, no, you're not. No, you're not fixing it. It's not 1970. No, you're not going to do that. And then it just basically creates a conflict. Panic occurs. Might turn on, might not. And if it does turn on, what you get is lag, unusable, and frozen lock screen. And this video is to prevent anyone from grabbing your device and doing this to you. I'm basically making this video so in case, you install iOS 27, you don't know, someone mean, grabs your device, does this to you. You don't know what the hell's going on. You just see the date's incorrect. You power off your device to make your device work properly again. You don't know. You power off your device or you hard reset it, and then you try and turn it back on, and then your device is broken. And that is what I'm trying to prevent people from doing. If you might have someone mean, or maybe even someone is mean, they do this to you and you don't know about it. You grab your device, you're like, okay, the date's incorrect, let me hard reset it, let me reboot it. You try turn it back on and your device is broken. So yep, that's what I want to warn you about. And also if you have mean people, if you have mean people that are close to you, then you don't want to install iOS 27 unless the iPhone 11 is supported. And if the iPhone 11 is unsupported, then you will have to wait until the C2 modems come out in September. All right, guys, thank you for watching and peace out.